Ontario Hockey League to make a special announcement on behalf of the Ontario Hockey League.
Thanks very much, Rocco. It is great to be back here with you and your team, the Oshawa Generals, to make an important announcement about sport and community sport in the province of Ontario. I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm here today with my dear friend and colleague, the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy, the Minister of Finance, who I'll more accurately introduce a little bit later and a little bit in more length. And I'd also like to welcome Ted Baker, who is our Vice President of the Ontario Hockey League, and of course, Patsy Coyle, Managing Director of the Ontario Sport Network, which I'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes. But I wanted to start by talking about the unifying power of sport, particularly in these very difficult times coming off of COVID-19. Some very polarizing debates in the nation right now, and of course what we're seeing a world away. We can always count on sport to bring us together, to remind us of what our community is. Now, the last 2 years have been particularly difficult for the heritage sport, tourism and culture industries in the province of Ontario and throughout the world. And our government has had to respond on numerous occasions in order to support organizations, not-for-profits and companies that were hit first, hardest, and are still taking the longest to recover. Community sport, university sport, sport in the entire province of Ontario was no exception. And that's why I'm pleased to be here today with so many of our sport partners to talk about the path forward and how your Ontario government is prepared to step up to the plate. You know, you really only need to think of the names Penny Alexiak, Andre Degas, Bianca Andreescu, or the Toronto Raptors, the Canadian men's and women's soccer teams, and of course recently the Canadian women's hockey team, to think about how we are all brought together and the healing power of sport and why these strategic and important investments we make as a government into sport play out not only here in our local communities like Oshawa and other places in Ontario, but on the world stage, bringing people together, having us cheer, identifying us as Canadians. One of the things I was most proud of in this pandemic when we were shuttered was making sure that we could open the Canadian Sport Institute of Ontario to get Ontario's Summer Olympians back into action. And we were successful in being one of the first places in North America in order to bring our high performance and athletes back to sport, bringing home 68% of the medals in Tokyo, with 47% of the athletes coming from Ontario. And we were quite pleased as well to work with the NHL, both for the bubble as well as for the Canadian division. We were also able to bring back many of our athletes into training facilities as a result of working with our Toronto Raptors. But today's announcement is about much more than that. It's about stabilizing Ontario's sport and recreation sector to help offset increased costs as a result of COVID-19, while also supporting the sector's future recovery in communities across the province. Today's is an important announcement. We will be investing $20 million to ministry-recognized provincial sport organizations and multi-sport organizations to distribute to local member clubs such as soccer, karate, and volleyball. An additional $7 million, and Patsy will have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that, will go to the Ontario Sports Network to distribute to local community-based sport and recreation organizations outside of our recognized sports system, such as dance and cheerleading, through an application process. That's something we found throughout this pandemic, is there are many organizations out there that weren't adequately captured through our provincial sport networks. And so we're going to try and fix that and make sure they feel like they're part of Team Ontario. And finally, the Ontario Hockey League is iconic in this province and in North America. And that's why we're going to invest $3 million today to assist the Ontario Hockey League's 17 teams in communities across the province so that they can meet their academic scholarship commitments for future and current players. I just want to take a moment to talk about our provincial sport organizations and our multi-sport organizations. There's roughly 3.1 million young athletes today involved in over 7,400 different clubs across the province. And the Ontario Sport Network, which is now a new and not-for-profit organization, is dedicated to the promotion of sport and physical activity with the capacity to deliver funding to local community sport and recreation clubs. And I would be remiss not to say thank you to Cyril Leader and Debbie Lowe, who worked with me over the past number of years to identify the gaps that we have had in sport in Ontario, and I hope that they play a larger role in the years to come. I'd also like to say that the province investment in the OHL will help preserve jobs in local communities and ensure the league can meet its academic scholarship commitments for current and former players. And I'm really excited that we have a few of our players here today, including Ty Tullio and Leighton Moore, David Jesus, and Brett Harrison, all from our Oshawa Generals. Last year, our government invested $2.35 million to support the OHL Post-Secondary Education Scholarship Program, and today we're pleased to be meeting and exceeding that because we recognize how important it is as a feeder to the NHL. But none of this would be possible, my colleagues and friends, if it were not from the support, the substantial support that I received from a local Durham MPP and the Finance Minister of the Province of Ontario. I'm fortunate that I have a colleague who understands the spectacular double bottom line that is the heritage, sport, tourism, and culture sectors in this province. All total, these sectors combine to ensure that each community across Ontario is livable, workable, and playable, and welcomes visitors. And at the same time, beyond the cultural and societal fabric that they lend their heavyweights to, is they drive a $75 billion suite of sectors in the economy. Sport and recreation alone are $12.6 billion of that. And if you can imagine in communities like Oshawa, where their Oshawa Generals were shuttered and these stands were not filled, or in communities like mine, where the Ottawa 67s, the Red Blacks, and of course, our Senators were not open for business, that bottom line, both the cultural side of it as well as the economic side of it, took a big hit. And there was one person I could always count on to understand what I was trying to achieve and what our communities and our sectors were trying to achieve. And that is the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy, a local MPP here, but more importantly, the Finance Minister of the Province of Ontario. Peter, we'd like to welcome you up to say a few words. Thank you.
It's great to be here, and it's great to see players again and playing, and it's so exciting, Rocco, and thank you for inviting me here. I took a quick tour of the locker room and of course saw the standings there, and Lisa, sadly your Ottawa 67s are below our Oshawa Generals, which is okay with me, but sorry to invite you here to see that. It's great. I grew up in Montreal, and when you grow up in Montreal, you're born with skates on. That's one of the things you're born with. And I played hockey from a very young age, and I was fortunate enough to play with three fellows. They moved up higher. I only went to a little bit of junior B. They went to junior A, and then three of them made the NHL, and one of them, Steve Casper, had a long career. I'm dating myself a little bit. Steve Casper went and played for the Boston Bruins and then the LA Kings, and he was just such a tenacious fellow. And Wayne Gretzky, who I've had the fortune to meet a number of times, told me he's the best defensive forward he ever played against. And so when I see you guys, and I know you have aspirations to be in the NHL, follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. If Steve Casper can do that and Peter Bethlenfalvy can play and almost get there, you guys will. So best of luck to all of you. And thank you for being here. A quick shout out as well to my colleague, and he'll be a little embarrassed, Nick, sitting over there holding my coffee. Thank you very much, Nick. He works in my constituency office. He is such an Oshawa Generals fan, so much so that he lives across the street. And he does. He lives right in an apartment building right across the street, and we're going to come to a game, Nick. So thank you for being such a great guy in the constituency office and serving all the constituents, not only of Pickering-Uxbridge, but also all of Durham. And you're a great addition, and thank you for what you do. And finally, Lisa, you've been a great sponsor and advocate for sports in this great province. And being a kid who grew up playing sports, and it's great for mental health, it's great for physical activity, it's great for social. It's regardless of how your careers go, you're going to end up being incredible pillars of society because of team sports and team building and working with your peers and working as a team. Politics is very much like that. It's a team sport. You're only as good as the team. So it's an honor to be here standing with you and Rocco and your team. Very much appreciate the invitation coming out today. You know, over the last 2 years, we have made record investments to fight COVID-19. And it's been a tough 2 years. And we've done it to protect Ontario's people. We've done it to protect our progress. And we've done it to protect our economy. And we know, as Lisa said, that Ontario's sport and recreation sector was among the hardest hit during the pandemic. And that's why we're here today to announce the investment of $30 million to help offset increased costs for the sector and support recovery for our sports and recreation sectors in Ontario. This funding will help local member clubs and other community-based sports organizations get back on their feet, literally. That is why our government has a plan for recovery and prosperity, a plan to build Ontario by supporting main streets and communities right across this great province. So we're making investments in new hospitals, new highways, supporting workers, supporting employers, and measures to put more money back in the pockets of the hard-working families and seniors of this great province. So I just wanted to conclude by saying, you know, it's been a tough road over the last couple of years for every Ontarian. We've come through it. We've come through it together. And I have a budget to table in the near future, and I'm going to be very focused on moving Ontario forward because I believe that the Ontario spirit has shone through the pandemic, and we're going to come out stronger, and we're going to build a very strong Ontario together. So thank you very much, everyone. Pass it over to Ted.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Madam Minister, Mr. Minister, great to see you this morning. On behalf of Commissioner Branch, who is actually out of the country, not in position to be with us this morning, and as well the Board of Governors of the Ontario Hockey League, specifically the 17 Ontario-based teams, sincere thank you for the support that you're showing here today with the announcement in supporting our scholarship program. The League Scholarship Program is really a pillar of the League, and going back to March of 2020 when our season was shut down, no regular season, no playoffs, no Memorial Cup. The 2021 season, no regular season, no playoffs, no Memorial Cup. There was significant financial implications and hardships to our teams. But our teams, our owners, continue to fulfill the obligations to the most important people in our game, that's the players, in recognizing the scholarships they continue to access during the pandemic when we were shut down. This goes a long way to support our teams in that regard. Once again, for all those players that are attending university and accessing the OHL scholarship. I can tell you back, just a personal story, back the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, I was asked to be on a committee with a number of different sports that was put together through Minister MacLeod's office. And through that and through the additional dialogue that we've had with her office, the assistant deputy ministers, the minister of, through the Ministry of Health as well, the one thing that we've shown is that the leadership of Minister MacLeod through this pandemic has been outstanding. We know that she has advocated for all sport, and I don't mean just the OHL, but that is all sport across the sector, and I think that shows in the announcement today as well for just the continuing to use the power of sport to get us through the pandemic and get us to a point where we can come back all to play in that in a safe and healthy environment. So thank you, Minister, for your continued support and advocacy for all sport, and we look forward to continuing to work together and collaborate as we go forward. So thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. I was just saying the last time I was here was for a minor hockey tournament many, many years ago that my son played in. I want to give a shout out to my board members who are here supporting Johnny from Ontario Soccer and Miles from Rugby. We're excited to be working with Minister MacLeod and the ministry in providing an emergency relief fund targeting community-level sport recreation organizations and associations to deal with the financial burdens that COVID has caused. This investment will be instrumental to the province's reopening plan by driving forward increased community activity, increasing health and wellness for our citizens, and reinvigorating our vital sport ecosystem. Ontario's Sport Network is committed to creating and promoting a safe and inclusive sport environment for all Ontarians, and safe sport encompasses education, resources, programs, and tools in the areas of concussion management, injury prevention, addressing maltreatment, mental health, accessibility, and EDI. We have recently launched a campaign, you may have seen it on TV or in radio, on social media, Ontario, This Is Your Sport, and it's simply aimed to build community confidence once again and inspire more Ontarians at all ages and all backgrounds to get active. Our goal at OSN is to bring together the sport organizations, not-for-profits, and government in a collective vision to create an active, healthy, and exclusive province unified through sport. Thank you. I'll invite Minister MacLeod up for questions.
Thank you. We'll now be taking questions from the media. One question, one follow-up. If you have a question, please come to the mic.
Doug Boyd from Rogers TV. Lisa, and for Peter, can you tell me why the 17 teams, just the Ontario, and what does this say to the 3 U.S.-based teams where most of those players are Ontario-born?
Our focus is maintaining the 17 teams here in the province of Ontario and ensuring their viability. It's been a very tough year for them, and so we wanted to ensure that we were meeting their commitments. I think that there are other governments in other states and provinces that will take different choices and opinions, but it was really important for us to stabilize some of the expenditures for the OHL at this particular time. It was also important for us to look after some of those groups that hadn't received support from our government before, like dance and cheerleading as well. We have to look at Ontario-based athletes, but also Ontario-based organizations. They were our priority, and that's why we're here today. And I'd also just want to say, while I'm it's good to see you, Johnny and Miles. I'm sorry, I was looking at you, but you had your masks on, so I just wanted to say a quick hello and thank you for the incredible work that both of you are doing. I think we're all very, very proud of the FIFA World Cup qualifying match that we just saw and one to come. And I got to say, rugby is always leading the way on concussions and doing some great work. So it's a real pleasure to be with you guys. I'm happy to do a follow-up, or did you want Peter?
Well, thank you. I don't really have much to add to that question, other than to say, you know, as I said in my remarks, sports is so incredibly important, and the OHL provides leadership and inspiration to kids right across this province and the children of the province. And getting outside, playing hockey, playing your sport, doing activities is so critical, and that's why we're such a big supporter of not just the Ontario Hockey League, but all sports right across this province.
For Peter and for Lisa, we've seen a lot of ministers saying they're not going to be running in the next election. What's your plans? Are you guys both intended to run in the next election?
Yeah, thanks for that question. You know, it's a privilege and honor to do public service. And when I got elected 4 years ago, can you believe it's 4 years ago? On that night, I said I planned to run again, and I was going to work hard for the next 4 years to earn the privilege to serve again. And so I'll absolutely be running on June 2nd. And, you know, it's the great thing. I've been 30 years in the private sector. You have to reapply for the job in public service. And so I'm reapplying for the job, and I hope I get hired again for another 4 years.
Well, I'd hire Minister Bethlenfalvy anytime. So I think you're doing a fantastic job as the Minister of Finance and obviously as the local MPP here. Look, I'll be celebrating 16 years as an Ontario legislator this month, and I plan on 4 more years to add up to 20. So I'm looking forward to running again. I know some colleagues have made different decisions, and you know, the politics does take an incredible toll on one's life, on one's family life. We've been in 2 years into a pandemic. It's not necessarily been the easiest easiest of times, and sometimes it's right for individuals to do what they need to do in order for their own health and for their families. But I can tell you, I'm committed to running again, and I'm committed to trying to work with these sectors that I've had the privilege and honor of working with for the past 3 years to make sure that they're not only just reopened, but they're recovering. And so that's going to be my priority. But I'm looking forward to winning again on June the 2nd. Thanks.
That concludes our announcement. Thank you, everyone.